Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, the head of Britain's Chemical Defence Laboratory has told ITV News he can't prove the nerve agent used in the Salisbury attack was from Russia. But Gary Aikenhead said he's certain weapons inspectors will back up Porton Down's findings that Russia is behind the poisoning of the former spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia, as Rupert Evelyn reports.
In a war of words, the facts do not instantly stand out. What happened in Salisbury's pitted east against west with an attempted murder investigation using a chemical weapon. Scientists from the secretive Porton Down laboratory were asked to identify it, and they say there is no doubt about what it is.
We're highly confident, as I said, we're 100% certain that what was found in Salisbury is from the family known as Novichock.
Complete confidence. But as for who made it, how do you identify it as Russian?
Our job within the whole of this investigation is and was to identify the agent used, which is from the family of Novichock nerve agents. We provided that information to the government, who have then used a number of other sources to come to the conclusions that they have and then take the diplomatic steps that they have.
The lack of clarity about where the chemical came from that was used in the attack on Sergei Skripal and his daughter has led the Russians to a list of questions that throw doubt on the investigative process.
We suggest that the British authorities answer these questions. If they choose to ignore them, there is ample ground to assume that we are dealing with the grand-scale provocation.
The British government are resolute that the science combined with intelligence picture leads to one conclusion, that only Russia could be responsible. All sides will head to The Hague tomorrow for a specially convened meeting on the attack, where the only thing that seems certain is yet more mudslinging. Rupert Evelyn, ITV News.
Scientists at Porton Down have not been able to establish where the Novichock nerve agent used to poison Sergei and Yulia Skripal was made. The chief executive of the Defence Science and Technology Lab at Porton Down confirmed that the substance required extremely sophisticated methods to create something probably only in the capabilities of a state actor. He said establishing its origin required other inputs, some of them intelligence-based, that the government has access to.
Our job within the whole of this investigation is and was to identify the agent used, which is from the family of Novichock nerve agents. We provided that information to the government, who have then used a number of other sources to come to the conclusions that they have and then take the diplomatic steps that they have.
Let's start with the eye, and this is a story that we've been featuring very highly this evening. Scientists confirming that the nerve agent, well, they're saying that they can't confirm that it came from Russia. But yes, that's not to say that it didn't.
Indeed. And every paper has picked up on this Sky News interview now and is reporting in similar fashion tomorrow. And I have to tell you, first off, there's a substantial flaw to this entire story. And the flaw is this. At no stage were Porton Down ever asked, nor were they expected to, come up with the magic bullet to say, yes, not only is this very deadly Novichock nerve agent of a military grade, which we can establish, but we can also say, hand on heart, it came from Moscow. Because that's simply not their job. They don't have the technical abilities. But unfortunately today, the head of Porton Down, Gary Aikenhead, who was interviewed by you, suggested that that was indeed what was expected of them by this slightly clumsy collection of words which he put together, which ended up with, we have been unable to...
Well, he did say that their job was to establish what it was.
Yes.
Not where it came from.
Yeah, but he said, we have been unable to say where this came from. Now, what he should have said is, we could never have said where this came from. Our job as scientists, our job is to say what it is, how, where and why is the job of policemen and intelligence agencies. And that is what they've done successively, enough to allow Theresa May to go to Britain's allies all across the world, America and all across the European Union, and say, this is our intelligence, this is why we think Moscow used this Novichok, not just it is Novichok. And I think the flaw to all this is putting everything into the basket of Porton Down, which the head of today slightly suggested was his responsibility. It is not.
And Aisha, what he was saying also in that interview is that the scientific evidence is only one part of the jigsaw, that the government do have various other elements which could point the finger at Russia, and they're only one part of the puzzle.
Absolutely. There will be a lot of intelligence information that we as journalists, we are not privy to, the public are not privy to. Obviously, the government has been. And also the other international governments and heads of state that we have spoken to will have seen that evidence as well. And they will have used that intelligence and that evidence to make their decision about expelling all those Russian diplomats. So I think they wouldn't have just done that on a sort of uneducated whim. But I think the point to really underlie here is we will probably never, ever, ever get to the bottom of who did this. Whoever did it is not suddenly going to kind of put their hand up and go, actually, yes, I'm going to do a full confession. And the idea that we let the Russians do a sort of DIY CSI on this stuff is absolutely kind of for the birds as well. We will probably never, ever know. And the questions will then move to is, well, what do we do about this now? What is our relationship going to be like with Russia in the coming months and the coming years? And one of the things that a lot of international forecasters are worried about is we could be entering into a new Cold War with Russia at a time when geopolitics is very, very fragile. The world is changing in terms of who has the balance of power. Things are moving east. Putin is very important. President Xi in China is very important as well. We might not be in the Cold War yet, but there's certainly a case of the sniffles happening.
In terms of the politics, to bring it back round to that, the Times looking at whether Theresa May will be able to continue with the support that she's had, this alliance against Russia now.
And I'm sorry to say, an excellent newspaper, The Times, they've got this headline completely wrong.
What should it be?
There should be, nothing has changed, to quote Theresa May from roughly about a year ago.
Strong and stable.
The Times, just to deconstruct this a little bit, can substantiate the headline and say May is now battling to preserve her alliance by quoting one Am Incorrigible. Who he, you asked? Well, I can tell you they're one of the 5 deputy chairmen of the German Chancellor's Christian Democratic Union, not exactly a massive power player in German politics, who has said, well, hang on a minute, if the evidence is unprovable, why are we taking sanctions against Russia, expelling their diplomats? So this is the only major player across the entirety of Europe that they've managed to find to shake Theresa May's coalition.
But you can see how the thought might cross.
Yeah, and also I think...
This is just to finish the point. What is quite serious about this is... I don't think this is going to alter any alliances. I don't think this is going to change any expulsions. But what it gives is Vladimir Putin a massive bullet to fire in the information war, the propaganda war, which is what this is also about. Tomorrow, Vladimir Putin has managed to call a meeting of the OPCW, the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, which is the chemical weapons watchdog in The Hague. And all the different countries will then gather, and they will use this and scream from every pulpit they can throughout tomorrow. So it's a great bit of propaganda. Times, I'm afraid, slightly falling into the Kremlin's game by headlines and stories like that. I think the world is rock solid, or the Western world, in uniting against Putin. Unfortunately, it's given him some very, very precious ammunition.
But for balance as well, I think we should also, pivoting back to domestic politics, this line coming out of Porton Down will also give a lot of supporters of Jeremy Corbyn the view that he was actually right to ask.
Well, there have been lots of people talking about that.
I absolutely
saying he was right all along.
Yeah, and I think that there was nothing ignoble about him asking those questions. But I think the hard thing about this is that, as I said earlier, you were never going to get definitive proof about who it was, and you have to sort of look, what has Russia's kind of recent pattern of behaviour been? We had the death of Litvinenko, we've got something like 14 murder cases that the Home Secretary has opened up in London, suspicious deaths of people connected to the Russian establishment and the Kremlin. So, I think we have to... It's right to ask these questions, but we should also be a bit sort of savvy about this as well.
Tom, you think the Times got the headline wrong. What about The Guardian? What's their take on this story?
Again, very similar take to The Times, which is basically the absolute dream headline that Vladimir Putin wants to rate when he picks up his Guardian every morning in the Kremlin.
We haven't got the image of it yet, so just tell us what the headline
UK chemical experts unable to confirm nerve agent made in Russia. This is all about words, so let's just read it again. UK chemical experts unable to confirm nerve agent made in Russia. That would be to suggest they are able, in some paradigm universe or with a different set of facts in front of them, they are able to confirm this came from Russia. Novichock is a very, very powerful military-grade nerve agent, which is so powerful that it even seeps through chemical protection suits. That's why the Soviets designed it in the 1980s, to defeat Western troops on the battlefield, despite the fact they might have been wearing very, very strong chemical weapons protection. Almost nobody in the world has ever been capable of making that kind of weapon. It is a truly brilliant and devastating battlefield weapon. So you kind of have to think, well, if it wasn't the Russians, then who on earth could it have been? Then you add in all the different intelligence which MI6 and GCHQ have been compiling, such as, for example, the intelligence that Theresa May shared with the EU, which was the assassination programme over the last decade, which Moscow has been trying to develop. And then you come to that conclusion. Putting, as we keep on saying, everything on Porton Down is to fundamentally, not just, I think, do the Kremlin's work for them, but to completely misread the story. Sorry.
And there are other elements, as we said before, that need to come together in terms of evidence gathering.